Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of TalkFlow. As you can see, this is episode 14. Now, again, we have another guest episode, and today we have, I don't even need an introduction here. We have Raymmar from Finsweet. This is, what I was really excited for this episode. We actually, I think we were meant to do this like for quite a long time, but finally Raymmar, found some time. He was, moving about in apartments. So, yeah, Raymmar, why don't you introduce, yourself to the audience?
To everyone
Yeah,
who
well, you
already
said I don't
knows.
need an introduction, so let's just go. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm Raymmar. I'm the CMO at Finsweet, but I'm also a lot of other things. I'm a Webflow enthusiast. I'm a creator. I'm an artist. I enjoy lots of things, and so exploring and building on the web is one of my favorite things to do. And that's what brought me to Webflow. I'm really excited about the stuff we're working on at Finsweet in the community, the products, and just the impact we're having in general. And so it's a lot of fun to get a chance to interact with folks like you and do these kind of like interviews and streams. And we're just having a lot of fun kind of building in public. Like, we don't use that hashtag a lot, but that's exactly what we're doing. We're very open about the things we do and how we do it. And we love that dynamic of playing around with the community. We were just chatting about some of the live stream stuff. So yeah, it's fun. Welcome. Thank you for having me. Like, hey, it's your show, not my show. Okay.
I mean, you can run it if you want.
Yeah,
All right,
it's quite hard when it's quite hard when, like, normally Raymmar, you're the person like doing the live stream.
That's
so
right.
like it must be a bit weird, being on the other side of the stick, if that makes sense.
I've done plenty of
definitely
interviews,
weird.
so
Yeah.
It's definitely weird for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Anyway,
good to chat with
cool.
you guys. It's always fun. The thing about this community and the whole like what's happening in the online space is getting to build the real relationships with the folks you meet in like social media and stuff. And so that's what's fun from this to me. It's like every so often those virtual text-based relationships come into the real world, and even more so I've been traveling over the last 4 months, and so catching up and meeting people in person, and it's super cool. We had a Finsweet retreat, and we were able to meet with all the different folks, and that was one of the coolest things, was getting to finally meet all of these people that you interact with online. And it's just such an interesting time in the world where like this is even possible. And so it's that in and of itself is just exciting to be able to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, even me and Vermont, like, we've known each other for quite a while now.
We
And it's
live in
all
the same
online
city.
based.
We still haven't
We live
met
in the
each other.
same. We both live in London, but we haven't met up yet. But that's soon to come.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I know exactly what you mean.
Go outside.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit tough in London, like, Boris Johnson is a bit
it's
crazy
really
right now.
slow.
Yeah.
We should.
We're in
do like
Florida, so it's like another.
We should do like
planet
what
down
they
here.
did in Finsweet, the live stream with Raymmar and Joe
Oh,
right
right.
next to each other in live.
That's right.
We can do like a low budget version of that.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we can get
start off with the first question. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think
cool.
we were so conscious, like we want to. I think most of us kind of know about your whole Webflow and a pre-Webflow career, but I really want to dig. Like, I think in one of the live stream, I kind of commented like, I want to know your whole story, and then you're like, "Oh, that's too long. We can chat another day." And I just want to know, like, what was your life before Webflow and before web design? Like, what did you do, like right after college, or if you go to college after high school?
Yeah. I am a design school dropout who got lost in the world of sales for like a decade. I went to school for industrial design. I thought I wanted to be a car designer. Some of my best friends, like, are top designers in the world of automotive industry, and I just I didn't like the idea of sitting in a room and drawing all day long, right? Like, I love that. I have that creative outlet, but it just wasn't for me in practice. And at the time I wasn't really sure what was going on. I ended up having like something happen in my personal world between my first and second year of college that led me to drop out. And I ended up moving to Florida on a whim.
Right.
I got a job at a car dealership selling cars. That's a story in and of itself, but they were like guaranteeing $36,000 a year at the time. And I was like, oh shit, let's do this. And so I moved down to Florida and started selling cars. And from there, I got recruited to an insurance agency. From the insurance agency, like, things started getting really good. And then the economy crashed, 2007, 2008. The economy collapsed. I ended up, I don't know how much I want to share here. So I was married at the time, and ended up. I found out my wife was cheating on me at the within 6 months of losing my job, and the economy crashed. Everything just falls apart. So literally, I go from like 23 years old, 24 years old, making crazy money, insurance industry, suit and tie. If you can imagine me, suit and tied up, super corporate. Life's just on this one trajectory, and all of a sudden it's not. It's like everything changes
overnight, right?
Lose my job, economy crashes, lose my job, find out my wife's cheating on me, end up having to move out of my house that we had just bought, like a year and a half before, and I end up moving into my mom's basement back in Columbus, Ohio. So it's cold, it's gross, it's like November, and from there, like, it was out of work for a while. I got a job at like this sweatshop sales organization. I was doing office supply sales door to door. And I did that for about a year. It was like Dunder Mifflin style. It was absolutely terrible. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. But the whole sales trajectory, like, I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't feel authentic in the suit and tie thing. Like, I felt like I was spending a lot of my time training on how to go out and like manipulate people into buying the things that I needed. Like, that was the sales process. And I saw it getting really predatory. And as I did the sweatshop sales thing, as I did the door-to-door sales thing, like, shit got real wild. And I would like walk into businesses, and within 5 minutes, I'm like selling them $2,500 worth of stuff. And I'm like, damn, how is this working? And I was usually good chatting with people. And so I understood, like, okay, you're good at sales, Raymmar. You're good at like talking and doing this thing, but I don't want to sell anymore. And so I started looking for different things I could do. And my mom hooked me up with this like technology guy. My mom's like, oh, you gotta hook up with this guy. He's doing the software stuff. And I'm like, okay. She's like, he needs someone to sell. And so he had like this whole text messaging platform that he was going to sell. And I start talking with him. I'm trying to understand what he's selling. I think he's like, oh shit, you invented this. This is your technology. This is amazing. And this is before text marketing was really a thing. This is a big thing. And what I found out was he had just licensed the software. Like, it was a SaaS model, and he had just bought like rights to license this thing. He bought his own little short code, and he was just trying to hustle this thing out. And so I was like, oh, I could do that. And so I found out how much it was. I talked to a couple of friends into giving me some money. I was like, told my mom, okay, I'm going to go start my own business again. I'm going to like get out of here. I'd saved a little bit of money, and I end up going back down to Florida, and I start selling text messaging door to door, because all I knew was going door to door and selling. And nobody wanted to buy text messaging. Like, they didn't want it as a standalone solution. They wanted it as like integrated marketing. And so over the next 6 months, I started discovering what people wanted from a marketing standpoint. They didn't want text marketing, but they wanted web development. They wanted funnels. They wanted this, that, the other. And I had some design experience because I'm a design school dropout. I had some sales experience, and I was like, okay, I can figure out how to get people to like hire me to do this marketing thing, I guess. And so I just started going out and talking to people. I started going to like Chamber of Commerce events. I started networking in the community. And I talked some company into paying me like $10,000 to redesign their logo and build a website. And I had not done either of those ever professionally before. And it's funny because I just bumped into this web developer the other day here in town. I knew I could do the logo because I had some design skills. I was like, I can figure this out. I can make a mark that's beautiful for you. I know confidently I can do that. But the website, I didn't know. I'd never built a website. And so I reached out to some friends. I found this guy, and I hired him to build this website for me. And I gave him, half of the deposit that I had taken for this project. And we had like 90 days to deliver the website. 60 days into that, he comes back to me and says, I can't build this. So I have now 30 days to build a website, and the client all the while thinks everything's okay. And so that's how I entered the world of web design. Like, literally in that moment, it's like, I got to figure out how to build websites. I built him this terrible website because it was like my first website other than my own. Like, and I started experimenting with my website. Then about 6 months later, I come back to them, and somehow they stuck with me as a client, even though I delivered a shit website. They were actually paying me a monthly retainer to do their marketing for them, which is crazy. And so I came back, and I had learned. And so 6 months later, I was like, here's a nice website, like, what you should have gotten 6 months ago. And they ended up being my client for like the next couple of years. They appreciated my effort. They appreciated my approach. And that was my first web design client. From there, I started understanding WordPress. This was WordPress at the time. And so I started just going out and looking for more clients. I stumbled into a WordPress meetup, and that's how I got started in community and web design. And like literally, it was just a happenstance. I was trying to reinvent my career, and one path led to another. That leads us to here.
I
Right.
was not expecting that. That was that took me down
Crazy,
like a
huh?
whole movie.
Yeah.
And it's like in those early days were wild. Like we could go into the sweatshop sales for a year, like the shit that happened that year, like learning and training and traveling. And we would train sales teams all over the Midwest. And it was just wild. And when you learn that you could like walk into a place and within a couple minutes build a relationship, I called it like 5-minute friends.
Yeah.
Like you can make friends with somebody within a couple minutes, and you walk off the street and they're like, okay, now I'm going to buy stuff off you. Like that becomes something that you're like, okay, like there's
It's like
something here that you can use.
Yeah, it's
You
like a
know?
superpower, isn't it?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
but I hated always feeling like I was tricking people or anything. I was like, I got to use a superpower for good, you know? And actually when like at some point during there, between losing my job and my world falling apart and moving into my mom's basement, I wrote a manuscript called Sales Life with a F in parentheses. And it was like my philosophy on sales. And it's kind of what drives what I do now. It drives a lot of the work. It's all about the philosophy of sales and how I think we as creatives can use the sales process to like fix a lot of what's wrong with society right now. I think a lot of what's wrong with society is because people are just out there tricking other people into giving them money, and those incentives lead us to like really weird behaviors. So I think it's up to us as creators to like build new rules for how the system works. That's why I think Webflow is exciting. That's why I think what we're doing at Finsweet is exciting, because it's like putting tools into people's hands that might eventually change the way people do commerce, people interact online, people share and distribute information, and all that stuff's super important in the grand scheme of things, I think.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions we had was, how did your sales experience help? But I think that is very clear. Like, without the sales experience, would you be able to land the same 10K client again? Like without the sales process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
And
think the sales experience also helps with like the live streams. People ask me sometimes,
yeah,
like, how are you
yeah.
so fluid just talking off the cuff? It's like, well, walk into a doctor's office who's got a lobby full of patients and try to get the receptionist to let you go see the doctor to sell them office supplies. Like that's some hard shit to do, right? So sitting here on a screen talking to like people who understand, like that's easy stuff. So it's just, I don't know. It's all perspective.
Yeah, but so now I think Joe has the same sort of experience in the sales. He comes from the sales background as well. Do you think it's essential for like creatives like us? I mean, I know it's important, but would you say like how would someone like us, learn how to do sales?
Yeah.
Using what we do.
That's a good question. I think the sales training is important for everyone, like at a certain level of it. That's why Joe and I do the growth show.
Yeah.
We really, like when we started talking about this, we didn't want to there was a lot of people doing tutorials and educational content about how to use Webflow that we didn't feel like that would be a lot of value, he and I doing that, even though we do some of that now on Thursdays. Where we thought the most value would be is that we both had sales experience. And, like I didn't build a Webflow agency to the size of Finsweet when I joined it, but I did have a lot of big clients. I had, and I had experience on other big projects, other sales projects, and like pulling teams together, and really on the community side of things, activating a community. And I think that that's important. We're even talking about doing like some structured sales training for web stuff. We want to offer like a paid course for specifically like hardcore sales stuff. But
sales. Yeah.
It's just something that creators aren't taught. This is something that's, it's like creators are taught to create, and then business people are taught to sell. And then that's why the business people come and take the work the creators do and they sell it, and they are the ones that squeeze all the money out of it. And the creators over here are supposed to be the starving artist or whatever. And we're seeing for the first time in society that that's shifting, where the creators are now taking control, and they're saying, no, we're going to keep the money. We're going to do this, and we're going to build the community. We're going to own this product. We're going to do whatever. And I think that's, like that's important to do. And I think part of that is teaching creatives how to sell themselves effectively. It's not something like creators are usually super empathetic, and they just want to please. They just want to say yes. They just want to like figure, and so that leads to like, that doesn't tend to lead itself to like asking for the sale or making sales. It usually tends to like being taken advantage of. And so teaching how to like make that shift as a creator in that mindset is super beneficial to somebody who's trying to start a business or make money on the web.
Right. I think, we talked about sales and all of that. I think another question we have is, what do you do as a marketing officer? I think that was like the main question we wanted to
Yeah,
ask.
I hate that title. Hang on one second.
Yeah, sure.
I actually hate the title of chief marketing officer because I'm not like a technical marketer. I'm not a traditional marketer. I even think on my LinkedIn profile it says I'm a non-traditional marketer, you know. Most of my focus is
I
on
think
community stuff. You know,
I
like
think you
most
said you
everything.
wanted to.
What's
sorry.
that?
I think you wanted to change it to chief community officer in like one of the
Yeah,
streams, if I remember.
that makes more sense. And a chief anything officer is like a lot to say at Finsweet because we're a pretty flat organization.
Yeah.
So it's not like I have a big team where I'm the boss of anybody and I'm like, do all these things, you know? Everybody here is really like carrying their own load. And so for me, like my main responsibility is organizing events, managing the live streams. I review some of the content, but not even that. Like a lot of times things launch and I'm like, where'd that come from? You know, it happens all the time where I see something, I'm like, damn, I didn't even know we were working on that. You know, like I got briefed on something today that's going to be massive, and the Webflow could be like massive in the Webflow community, and I'm just like, what, we're doing that too, you know? And so there's so many cool little projects happening that it's hard to think that like I'm the chief marketing officer of all of that. That's not like, that's why I don't like the title. What I do well and what I think Joe, you know, likes having me on the team for, what I'm really strong at is bringing people together and organizing events, and also the web and multimedia stuff, right? So that's kind of the crux of my responsibilities. We're also building products, you know, like last year we made the switch into products. This year you're going to see us launch a couple major products as well as like a paid community tier. And so I'm organizing the paid community tier. I'm organizing one of the products that we'll be launching. And yeah, so it's like nobody here does a single thing. Everyone is just kind of like has their hand in a bunch of different pots. It's not an organization like anything I've ever seen or experienced before. It really is so unique in how Joe manages the team, how we interact, completely asynchronous. It's just wild. It's one of those things that like I've never experienced. It's totally unique for me, but it's super cool. And obviously it's effective. And so we're just trying to figure out how to kind of harness this raw creative energy that we have on the team.
Yeah, I think this is what Harshit said in the last stream as well. It's like it's a company that he's never seen before, which is really cool, right? Like I think that itself could be a whole topic or a whole book.
We are 100% redefining what the corporate culture looks like, or what a remote work or what work looks like. You know, I hear other teams talk about their remote. You know, like I see them in practice, and then I see what we do, and I'm like, that's not like, you know, like what, you know, and I love it. Like we don't get lost in like we don't have any meetings. We literally don't have meetings. Every once in a while, we have a all hands once a month. We have small teams that will meet and do little things, but like, it's not. It's
saves
like,
a lot
hey,
of time.
Here's your responsibilities. I know you're really good at this thing. Go do that thing. And when you're done, we'll find more things to do. And then in the process of doing those things, you cross paths with somebody else who's really good at doing a thing. You're like, what if we did these things together and did it like this? And you're like, that's a really good idea. And we do it. And then that forms a little, and then next, you know, 3 weeks later, that's a browser extension that the whole community is buzzing about, you know? And so like,
I wanted to say, like, I think Finsweet is like a community in itself, which Joe has put together, which then when you launch anything, it's like, oh yeah, why didn't we think of that? Right? It's very hard for like one person to think of it. Whereas when you have like, I don't know, Finsweet has like 50, 60 people in it, and everybody knows Webflow, everybody loves Webflow. Just put them together.
We're close to 50 people now.
Yeah.
And we're all some of the top minds in the world of Webflow. Like we all breathe, eat, sleep, drink Webflow. And so, we're like thinking about this thing in ways, and we're all dealing with a bunch of different projects. Some people are working on enterprise level projects. Some people are working on smaller, like or SaaS style projects. Other ones are working on community things or clonables or client first or attributes. And it's like so many different, like, you know, facets here.
Right.
So we see this whole product and ecosystem in a very unique way, and I think that's going to allow us to solve problems and to bring things to the table that Webflow themselves is not thinking about. Like we've seen that a number of
Clearly.
times where
Yeah.
we're just like filling the gaps. Like we've built a whole business filling the gaps,
Yeah.
of what the Webflow users need, what the Webflow product is, and can we somehow fit those gaps. And that stuff we don't charge for yet. Like we haven't charged for any of that. Like we
Yeah.
literally have not charged for anything other than like web development up to this point. And so this will be the first year where we start charging for like paid products and paid community and things like that. And so we think we're just getting started here. Like last year we did a ton. We did our year in the recap, and it's like, holy crap, we accomplished so much last year, but we really think like we're just getting started.
Right.
I'm wondering
I actually
what
wanted
else.
to. Sorry. I wanted to ask Raymmar, how long you been in Finsweet? How many years?
Just
Oh,
over
yeah.
a year. October 5th was a 1
Oh.
year. So
I
literally it's
see.
like 13 months now.
Yeah. So
Looks
I
like you've
wanted
been
to
there
ask,
for
like,
so
just
long.
just as a follow up with that, like, I think I've been following Finsweet for around a year as well now, and I've personally seen the growth as well that you guys have had in the past year in terms of clonables. Your clonables, sorry, the tools that you release to the community has been getting better and better. So I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, Raymmar, like, because you were part of Finsweet, you saw everything that was going on inside during that growth. What do you think was the main thing that allowed you guys to grow that fast? Was it like the
Mm.
stuff that you were doing? Was it perhaps the projects you were getting were getting better and better? What was that thing?
I think it's an aggregation of everything I was just talking about earlier with how
Right.
the team runs, right? Like when you get really talented people into position and you get out of their way and let them be talented at what they do, like you can accomplish anything. I think what
Right.
happens is like the bigger you get, the more the more safety nets and structure you have to start putting around certain roles, which lead to all these big processes and procedures, which is the only way you can scale, right? It's literally the only way you can scale after a certain size. But we're not there yet. We're still at the point where it's like super nimble, super like, hey, we got this initiative. We want to just change directions and run down that road. Cool, let's do that. We'll turn on a dime. And so that it's just that ability, right? It's the ability to see something and then put a 3 or 4 really smart brains on it that have the skill to accomplish any given task and just let them go.
Right.
I don't think
Yeah,
that happens a lot. I don't think like the freedom to actually like for people to
Yeah.
go and explore happens a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
even
think even Harsha was telling us the same, right? Like
yeah.
you guys allow him to do anything, and I'm pretty sure that's the
And I
truth of the
think
entire
that's
team.
why everybody loves Finsweet. It's just that there
Yeah.
isn't a middle management layer that you have to go through, which is often always the most annoying and the most time consuming part of any organization. I have
Yeah.
friends in like different industries, and they just wait for their managers to approve on something. Or like
Yeah.
if they have tech issue, they have to wait for somebody to, to even report it to someone, you have to report it to someone to report
Yeah.
it to someone.
Yeah.
And this sort of like multi-level management
Yeah.
bullshit is what I think we don't really need, especially in this industry when you just have
Yeah.
the work, you can go and do it. And I think that's why I think Finsweet's way of management could be its own class of its own. Like I personally have not seen any
I
industry or anybody use it.
see this Finsweet thing evolving into just such a massive network of folks. That's why the
Yeah.
community is so important to us. Because like we want to start training folks. And like if you want to make money with Webflow, like we want to help you. That's kind of like our mission. If you're trying to make money with this tool, we want to make that path easier. Whether that's with tools, whether that's with resources, like whatever it is, like that's kind of our stated mission. And so yeah, the ability to just create that kind of assets that help creators create, that becomes exponential. And so like you can start stacking those things, and like you give people again the freedom to do that stuff, like you get really cool products as an end result.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, I want to go back a little bit because we had a question yesterday when we did the live stream. How do you stay motivated when you're always head down? And I think because what you mentioned earlier, I think that's the only thing I wanted to ask is what did you, because it's very easy to go in this whole spiral of negativity, especially what you had gone through at that age as well as pretty much my age right now. And literally I was like, what if I lose everything I have today? And like I literally felt my heart sink. It's like what kept you going, back then as a young man?
I
mean,
don't
not to
know.
say you're old, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question because I don't know what kept me going. I almost didn't. Like there was a time where like, yeah, when my life fell apart, like I was like, fuck it. It like, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, my mental health was not in a good place at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine.
And
Yeah.
yeah, like literally everything I knew about the world. Like I was a 24-year-old kid making 6 figures plus annually. Was married, beautiful house. You know, life was good. And then literally within 6 months, nothing. You're like just nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a big shock. I don't know. Like, and there's lots of stuff like that happening now. Like people are being impacted all around the world with, you know, with the lockdowns and with the economy stuff. And so like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I thought about that a number of times. Like what, you know, what keeps going? And it was just the, honestly, deep down, like it's this desire that I know that I'm supposed to do something special. Right.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I always hold on to that idea that like I was put here for some crazy reason, and that was to do something bigger than me, you know?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And so there was always like this calling. That's why I'm entrepreneurial. That's where there was always this calling to like just get back up on the saddle and do it. But then that's
Yeah.
also why I decided I was going to do it for myself. I didn't want to go back to some organization. I wasn't going to go put myself back in a position to like let someone fire me again, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so the idea was to go from unhireable to unfireable. Because at that point,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
couldn't really get a job. Like I was, you know, I was coming from the insurance world. The recession was hit. Like nobody was hiring anybody. I worked in a
Yeah.
kitchen for a while, you know, like I went back and worked at a swimming pool, you know, like just these shitty jobs until I figured out how to get back up on my feet. And so, yeah, just you got to stick with it. Like you got to have the desire to want to do something bigger, and you got to be
Yeah.
willing to make the sacrifices. Like I see a lot of people, even my creator friends who, you know, they want to be the next superstar creator. They want to be the next whatever, but they don't want to put in the work. You know, they don't want to like, when I was learning Webflow, I spent countless hours just lost in the software, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just like anything. Like you want to go be a pro at a guitar, you got to fucking spend 10,000 hours playing the guitar until you can do it in your sleep, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like you got to put in the work, and then you got to have that mindset that like you can do it. This is the time. Like there's never been a better time to make money as a creator and to just
Yeah.
be able to build on the web and make your own path. And so like, yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question. We could probably talk about that for a whole episode, just
Yeah.
dealing with overcoming your own inner demons as a creator.
Yeah, because I don't think not a lot of people speak about all of this,
Mhm.
especially at a stage that you are. It's very easy to hide a lot of things, but if you bring it up, and if somebody's going through the same thing, it's always good to say like you
Yeah.
can do better. You will get there if you keep putting the work.
That's one of the things I love about this community. It's so empowering and accepting and like encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's also one of the reasons why I got started in WordPress meetups way back when, because I wanted to like, as soon as I learned this skill and I was like, oh shit, people will pay me like $5,000 for like this to do what?
yeah,
You know, to spend like I'm clicking, clacking on my keyboard. Like literally I have this box on my desk that I touch and money goes into my bank account. You know, like I
Yeah.
sit in front of a fucking screen, I hit these keys and money fills into my bank account. And I was like,
What?
did y'all know about this? Like, did you know about this? And nobody,
Yeah.
like, what? And so I had to start sharing this. And that's why I got into the WordPress meetups, and I wanted to help other people learn. And as soon as I found Webflow, because again, like I was always limiting with WordPress, I was like, I want to do more. I was a creator, I was a designer, I was a design school dropout, and I wanted to build these beautiful things I was seeing online, but I couldn't do it with WordPress. And so I was always looking, where's the next thing? Like, there's got to be something. And then I found Webflow, and I was like, what is this for real? And so I got lost down this rabbit hole. And so when I made that switch, I switched my WordPress meetup to Webflow because I'm like, okay, I still have this passion to teach. You know, like you can make money, you can do this, like you can do this. If I can do this, you can do this, right? I'm not like that special. I'm, you know, I have
Yeah.
some creative skills. I'm smart. I got, you know, like, but mostly I'm just stubborn and I got a good work ethic, you know, and I
Right.
don't give up. And I think those like that resilience is more important than, you know, talent most of the time.
Yeah. And I think like our goal behind what we do as well, creating content, is the same. Like when we were starting out, I think Vimani, you mentioned this quite a lot of times, like all we see is the experts, right? And the people at the top of the industry. But you never see like people like just one level above you, two levels above you, like doing stuff. So I think that's why like we do what we do. So like the people that are just starting out can like is more
And it's
realistic when it comes from us
and
than
it's
like a
also
proper expert, right?
and yeah, and you said like the community is like, I was afraid like people are gonna compare with like Finsweet or other creators out there, like, oh, your video is not good enough, or
Yeah.
your setup is not good enough. But nobody cares, right? Everybody's just, the fact that we still, I think we only get one dislike the entire 14 videos we have done, and I'm sure most of them are from the Webflow community, like the likes, and the fact that we only still got one dislike, I was like, oh, this is
Yeah.
such a
Yeah.
positive community, you know.
If you spend any time on YouTube, you will see like videos with hundreds of thousands of views that look like they were produced while the person was sleeping, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you got a camera and a mic, you could do whatever. Like you could always get lost, spend more money on gear,
Yeah.
which I tend to do sometimes. But I also used to have a video production studio, so like I have a background in video production. When yeah, there's so much there because I got into the web stuff, but then in the local community, I got really involved in local community. And so the reason I got into community after the web stuff was because I started again the incentives about information distribution, and I didn't like how sales worked, and I was like, we got to fix this. So in the process of learning how to build websites, I started experimenting with my own website, and I started a blog, and that blog started getting a lot of attention, like crazy attention. Like a few things went viral. I don't really want to go into that, but I was like throwing shit at the wall. I was like, yeah, I was just gonna make noise, right? I was just a kid. I'm gonna blog. Yeah. And actually, I got invited to this big political conference because some of my videos went viral. And so I go to Washington, D.C., and I sit on Radio Row for 3 days. And right next to me is the Sirius XM booth. And I'm sitting there with some of the biggest political commentators in the world. And it's just me. And right here, we got this like internet radio station. And we had such corny gear. It was so terrible. It was like bad. It was like crackly. The internet connection was terrible. And again, right next to me is Sirius XM. And I'm like, damn, that's how the pros do it over there, huh? And so at one point I had gotten like to chat with them, and they're like, yo, come over here for one of our shows and like be on. And I was like, what? And so they invited me to come on, and we did political commentary on what was happening on the stage. And there was like big players in the house, you know, like there's representatives, there was congressmen, you know, like there was like, it was, you know, cool. Like and that's where I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And that's when I started my podcast. Was after that, I started my first podcast. And so experimenting with all of that got me tied into like local politics. And I started thinking, okay, one step back. I started thinking when my first piece went viral, how do you monetize this? And outside of just putting advertisement on your website, there's very little ways to monetize your creative output in the sense of a blog, especially at that time. This is back in like 2013, 14. And so I started thinking there's got to be better ways to monetize this. And so I started looking into products and software and things. And like I started thinking about, I'm going to build this platform that does X, Y, or Z. And again, that's how I got pushed into no code, because I was looking for how to do more than I was just building a website or whatever. And I wanted to build a platform. I wanted to build tools to help people do this kind of thing. And so that was a big passion for me, was like going down these channels. And again, that's what leads us back to no code. That's what leads us back to what we're doing now. Yeah, I mean, there's so much there to unpack, but some of that passion is obviously what drew Joe to me, right? In the community here, we threw this big town hall where we had like 500 people show up in person, you know, with 7 politicians on stage. We had this choreographed thing, and we turned like a local city hall election into like this grand event, and we made politics fun, and we got young people to show up, and the young people turned out to vote, and like we changed, like we had an impact in the real world. And like that was amazing for me, you know. And so like right now we're doing all this community online, and everybody is buzzing about community, but that real part, that the human side of things matters too, right? Like what's happening in the local world, in your city, and so that like that appeals to me. So how do you take some of this technology, how do you take some of that local community and mix that? And that's where I get excited to experiment, like on the grand vision. I know we're well away from like Webflow and those tools, but like that's where I think all this leads, right? These tools, these no code tools, lead to people like me being able to come into a community like this and create cool disruptive things that at one point we were challenging the local media companies. Like we were driving more traffic here locally and driving more engagement and more like impact than the local newspaper, than the local TV company. And I was like one person blogging. It's like, how does this happen? But we couldn't make any money. You know, so it's like, and now we're finally at the point where you can find ways. It's, you know, you can look, there's tools and stuff. And so it's been a wild path, just exploring this thing called the internet and building things for the internet and somehow finding ways to help other people build for the internet. And I'm excited to see wherever that path goes. Like, to me, these doors are just being unlocked all over, and I'm really excited to see how that evolves over the next few years.
Right.
Yeah, I think since you have experience in the Webflow and the WordPress community, what do you see any difference between both, or are they pretty much the same?
Oh, huge differences. I mean, first, like we did a whole episode on this. WordPress is open source, Webflow is closed source.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest difference right off the bat.
No, I mean like the community itself, like the people they use WordPress versus Webflow. Do you see any difference?
I see. I will say that both WordPress and Webflow, like Webflow community feels like WordPress community 10 years ago.
All right. Yeah.
Like when I was first getting into WordPress, there was like Joomla and Drupal and all these other CMSs, and like it was the battle of the CMSs, and they were all open source, and it's like all were cool. They all had plugins. You could do some cool shit with them, but WordPress had the community, and you could tell there were like meetups and little things and forums and stuff was buzzing, and I was like, this like, so I went with WordPress because of that community. And I think the Webflow community is basically just like that in the early stages of that WordPress ecosystem, where right now it's super friendly because it's not that big, you know, and we're all kind of distributed and we're in different places. And, like if you search for WordPress dev local, any location, you're going to get 100 people. You search Webflow, like you might get one or two, maybe, right? Maybe you might find somebody within a 100-mile radius or something. It's just not that big yet, right? Yeah. Whereas there's not 3 or 10 or 50 pages of Google search results if you search for WordPress. So we're in the really early stages of this industry. And yeah, I think there's a lot of very similar things, right? There's the mindset of like people understand the value of being able to build online and own that web property that you're publishing to. Like those two things are important. And we could argue all day on the open source thing. But
yeah. So if let's say Webflow does become as big as WordPress, do you think we will lose the community?
Yeah,
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
Not that you'll lose it; it will just be different.
Right.
What you'll see is, and this is something where Webflow has to understand too. Webflow likes to think they can control the community from the top down, whereas a true community is organic from the bottom up. Right? It's organic from the crowd. That's what makes it a community, right?
Yeah.
And so like Webflow would do well to just let the community build and do things and not try to like they should find where that's happening organically in the community and just pour fuel on those fires, right? And regardless of that, like in the WordPress world, why there's conflict is because there's so many small communities. Like there is not one big WordPress community. There's like a big WordPress community that's made up of many micro communities, right? Some of which are bigger than Webflow's community entirely. Like, like seriously, if you get into like the Elementor community, they probably have as many users as Webflow does, and they have their own community, and that's tied into the Webflow or WordPress community, but it's like a microcosm of it. And there's 50 other ones that I could name that are just as big. Yoast SEO, the WP Beginner, the like all the little WordCamp groups, all these little things. And because it's open source, they all get to say how the product evolves and what the initiatives are, and that creates tension. And then you have Automatic, Matt Mullenweg, etc., come in and do things like Gutenberg and push for this new editor type thing, which again creates rifts in the community because maybe the community wanted to go a different direction or they see it being handled a certain way. And so inevitably, as something grows to the scale of WordPress, like you're just going to get splinters in the community. And so I do see that coming. I think in a couple years, I don't know if it's 2, I don't know if it's 5, but the Webflow community and the no code community in general will become a lot more competitive. That's not to say that it won't still be valuable and that there won't still be a lot of warmth inside of these communities, but you'll start seeing more and more like little heads up, little conflicts, little things,
little like micro communities.
Well, and you've already seen this. If you remember Brittany Caldwell, when she quit Webflow, she went out in a blaze of glory and wrote this article that went viral about, how Silicon Valley perpetuates white supremacy and blah blah whatever else, and she had to get on her soapbox, and so and that went all through Silicon Valley. It was featured on the media. I think that the tweet had like 3,000 retweets on it or something silly like that. And so things are already percolating. There's little things that happen, and that's just one instance. There's been others in the space. But yeah, it's going to continue. That'll increase. That'll continue to go. It's just inevitable. Like the bigger something gets, the more people you have, like the more conflict you're going to end up with.
Yeah. So, Raymmar, I wanted to ask you about something. I remember in one of your previous episodes, the effing growth episodes, you mentioned something along the lines of you should, if you want to make serious money in Webflow, you have to go full time. And I wanted to ask you because I'm not sure if you know, but I am a student, so I still go to university and stuff while I do this. So I kind of, when you said that, I was like, oh shit, like, should I drop out? But I wanted to ask you, like, what would you say to all of the students out there, or like some people, the people who have like part-time jobs and are trying to become a success at Webflow?
I didn't mean that as in like you have to make it your full-time job,
right?
Or that's the only thing. I guess you have to go all in on it,
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that means neglecting, like, look, man, sometimes school is not that effective, right? They're not teaching you the most. I have a shirt on right here that says product of public schools, so like I'm a big fan of education and public education, but I also think like you got to follow your passion, and if you're going to succeed at something, you kind of got to go all in. Now, that's not to say that as a student, you probably don't have the same bills, you don't have the same responsibilities. The big problem is like folks at some point, that they're just hesitant to jump, and it's like at a certain point, you got to take the risk and you got to jump and make the transition. But in web design, you can make good money on the side. You can have a project here and a project there. And the cool thing about this is that you're in control of your own time. And so you can usually fit the work in wherever it makes sense. So if there's any industry where you can kind of split your time, it's just what I meant by going all in is becoming obsessive with like learning and making sure that you're fully going to deliver like top-notch products. You can't just like think you're going to start, downloading templates and just customizing templates, and then you're going to make a ton of money as a Webflow developer. Like, no, you got to go learn how to build in Webflow. You got to go learn interactions. You got to go learn CSS, and you got to learn positioning and a box model and blah, blah. And then you can, maybe make some money selling these services. But a lot of people want shortcuts. And so the point that I was trying to make there was that there's not a lot of shortcuts when you want to come to make money in this space, mostly because it's pretty binary, right? Like the website either works or it doesn't. The element's either accessible or it isn't. People can either log in or they can't. And so like that's the beauty of this world is you can't bullshit your way through it, right? You either deliver the goods or you don't. And you can only BS your way through a certain number of times before you just end up out of the business, and so I think that's part of the beauty of this is that it doesn't really matter where you're from, what you look like. None of that stuff matters. It's like when I go to the place that you sent me to the URL, can I see the website? Can I engage with it on my device? Does it load? Like all those things, that's all that matters. And so you have to be willing to make the commitment to get to the level to deliver that quality of product that people are willing to pay for. And to do that usually takes an amount of dedication that some people are just not willing to put in.
Yeah. I think that like is kind of clarified what I was meant to, what I was thinking you said, right? Yeah, going all in. Yeah, I do agree with that. But I think I got another question for you, Raymmar. It's like, we asked this to Hashi, I believe, isn't it, Marlin? Where if you never landed a role at Finsweet, what would you be doing?
I don't know. I was pretty happy doing what I was doing, freelancing with the web, and I had a production studio. We were doing a lot of stuff here locally. The video studio was, the pandemic really hurt the video stuff, but we were transitioning to live stream stuff. And so live streams were, that was becoming a big revenue stream. And I was doing some pretty big websites, like I was landing website clients pretty regularly as like a freelancer. So I probably would have started scaling my web stuff. Like I was right at the point where I had a decent enough portfolio to start, trying to sell some bigger projects. And I would have kept chasing the video stuff. And probably playing with some products. I was already playing with some digital products. One of the reasons that it made a lot of sense to partner with Joe was to bring some of those things to life, because we both have different skill sets, and yeah, it just made a lot of sense once we met in San Francisco at the first No Code conference. We had kind of met online before that, and then we spent about a year just going back and forth, talking, built almost like a mentor relationship, where Joe and I were very close. Like we were in Slack all the time, just, talking about what's going on in Webflow and what he was doing, what I was doing, what the community was doing. And so it took a long time building that relationship. And then it just made sense, like overall my long-term goals, his long-term goals, they're really aligned. And yeah, it's hard to say because Finsweet came out of nowhere, right? Like I was happy doing what I was doing. I just got a chance to apply at Webflow for their head of community position, and I interviewed for that position and ended up not getting that job. But I think Joe had seen the Hire Me website that I built for that. And so that kind of sparked the interest. And I wasn't really looking for a job. I was very happy being my own, freelance employee. Like I was doing my own shit. And so, yeah, like this is kind of like the derailing, so you asked what would I be doing? It's like, no, like I'm kind of doing this because it was, made more sense. But yeah, I think we're excited to just keep pushing on these buttons.
Awesome.
Cool.
Right. So Raymmar, I wanted to we asked this to our last guest, but I wanted to ask you this as well. Our audience is mostly beginners, so I wanted to why don't you give us like 3 pieces of advice or tips to any beginner starting out with Webflow? What would the 3 tips or advice would you give them?
Okay. Okay, the first tip is figure out the fucking box model and CSS positioning. Like, quit fixing your horizontal scroll with overflow hidden. Yeah, global classes, like learn how it's supposed to work. Like step 1 is don't shortcut the technical learning. Webflow has a steeper learning curve than a Squarespace or a Wix or even a WordPress at a basic level in certain ways. But you can't like shortcut that. So step 1 is like make sure you understand it technically. 2 is understand fully the limitations. I see a lot of people who get into the world of Webflow and they think that now they can build anything, and they go start selling stuff and they get into situations where they can't deliver what they said because they didn't know the limitations of Webflow. And so now you're stuck in a position where you can't deliver on your word because you didn't understand these limitations. And that's not to say you can't overcome some of those limitations, but you got to understand the technical foundations and you got to understand the limitations. And after that, I think it's quit looking at the Mackenzie Childs and the Timothy Ricks and the Finsweets even for what you're supposed to be. Like go be your own thing. Webflow is literally a blank canvas. Go fucking show us what you got. Like don't try to make websites that look like every other website you've ever seen. Sure, there's certain things that should match, right? Like the navigation should be, here, and like on mobile, maybe the little buttons are close to the thumb, and like there's basic UI and UX principles that should stick, that matter, and performance always matters. But like, explore, man. This thing is a beautiful toy to just play with the web, and so many people get caught like trying to mimic the trends of the year or whatever, and they miss out on starting the new trend, and so it's push, push your creativity, push what you can build, explore the interactions, explore integrations, explore like other things. Don't just take it at face value of what it is, make it into what you think it could be. This is like, it's just an abstraction on the fundamental building blocks of the web, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And so the better you get at learning and understanding, again, the technical thing and understanding limitations, the more you can push it. So I think those 3 things, would be like the core of that.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't all of the 3 things that you mentioned were all from a technical standpoint inside of Webflow, right? I wasn't really expecting. I was expecting you to say something like, don't do this strategy, focus on LinkedIn or whatever, right? But all of those 3 points were technical, and I think it kind of shows how much of getting better at Webflow, becoming the best at Webflow matters to you. And so based on what you said, would you say that just focusing on becoming the best at Webflow is the number one thing that you should focus on when starting out?
Yeah, maybe not. I think you should split your time evenly in the technical side of things and
Right.
also building your brand,
I
building
see.
your personal brand, and
Mhm.
starting to build your audience. I have a friend who is building some software right now, and he's getting super excited because they're close to an MVP and they're getting ready to have like a product that they can like start showing people, but they've not done anything to build an audience for that product or market it. And same thing with your Webflow skills. You could be the best Webflow developer in the world, but if you can't get in front of the right client, it doesn't mean shit. And
Right.
so a lot of people get lost in the technical learning and they get lost building these beautiful projects, but they never put themselves in positions to use that practically in in like a paid gig. And so find the balance between learning and pushing your technical skill set and like the design side of things and getting in front of real people, networking, building assets for the community, whatever it is that's going to help you like break out into the market. That's as important. I see a lot of pretty mediocre web designers building projects for big companies because of their outreach rather than their design or development skills, right?
Mhm.
It's a relationship business. It's still about sales. It's still about delivering the value to the end user. And a lot of times that's about making sure that the person who's going to spend the money on the project you're selling trusts you to deliver the goods. And so to do that, you have to build that brand, you have to build that identity. And so, yeah, that's something that a lot of beginners don't focus on or start focusing on too late.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. I was gonna. Yeah. Sorry.
Are you okay?
We stunned him, y'all.
Oh. Oh wow! I thought something broke on my computer.
I thought that was what you're doing. I was like, oh wow, he figured it out.
Sorry, man. I lost my train of thought, man. I was gonna ask a question, but I literally forgot.
No,
My
we're not
bad.
cutting this, by the way.
Sorry?
Yeah, we are leaving that in.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Yeah, we'll leave that in. Cool. Listen, we're getting close to the 1 hour mark. We kind of wanted to keep this a bit
Yeah,
about
and I
less than
think
an
I think
hour.
what you say kind of wrapped up a lot of the things that we tend to say as well.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I think to wrap it up, I just want to ask you, what are your personal 2022 resolution, if you have any
Yeah.
that you would like to share?
I have a couple. I'm really focused on my mental and physical health right now. That stuff's important to me. I'm like I've gotten a little lazy behind the screen. I think over the last couple of years, learning how to make money out of this box, that I was talking about. And so just getting back into the real world, especially with the pandemic, been inside of our houses for a long time. And so I'm really just focused on a lot of that. As far as it relates to business wise, our goal for the community is to just double down on what we did last year. We're going to launch
Right.
this paid tier. We don't really have financial projections for that, so we don't have financial goals yet. We're working to kind of like outline what we think that could be. But just we want to continue to launch these products and really provide, double down on the value we provide to the community. So as a whole, the goal is to increase that offering and keep pushing the limits of what you can do with this platform.
Right. Yeah, I think
Right.
actually we are really excited. I think we kind of got a glimpse of
Yeah.
a lot of things that goes in behind Webflow and Finsweet and yourself especially. And I think that was the main reason why I wanted to do this sort of interviews is we see a little bit of you every week, but it's part of like Finsweet, but not like Raymmar alone.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think this is like probably the best one. I say this in every interview, but it's just I like doing this. You learn a lot from just listening to people.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really, really great to hear from you.
Yeah, I think I enjoy doing these. I've been thinking about I started with a podcast in my living room. Again, like 10 years ago, this whole like show started because I got a couple mics and started recording a podcast in my living room that ended up going viral, led to me starting doing videos and like blogging and blah, blah, whatever, which again, I explained some of how that ends up here. And part of me, I quit doing that at the time because like, you know, that's easy to do when you don't have much to lose. But once you start like getting to a certain place, you start saying stupid stuff online, and then, you know, that leads to all sorts of shit. But I'm kind of at the place where I want to do more of that. You know, I think the story behind what's happening here is more important than like the story itself. And the story of the people who are making it happen is what's interesting to me, right? There's so many people in this no code world, in this Webflow world, that came from different places that, you know, somehow stumbled into this path, that are here in the tech world non-traditionally. And I think that's what's exciting. For a long time, like, technology was limited to the folks in Silicon Valley, the elites, to solve problems for all the peasants, right?
Yeah.
Now the peasants, right, have access to this technology, and the problem solving skill set is being passed lower and lower in that hierarchy. So that now at the ground level, you have problem solving civility. Right now, we're not at the elite level, at the top of the ivory tower, saying this is how your technology should work. We have the people at the bottom saying, like, we want the technology to work like this, which is why we're building it this way. And that is the first time that's ever been feasible to do, right? It's never been feasible to build software for 100 people. It's just not financially, like, you need a lot more. You need millions of people to make the software financially viable. But now you can. And so we're at the forefront of something really special that's happening in all of society and all of technology and all of, like, just the evolution of the internet. And it's cool to be a part of that, even just in like a little level. And anything in my mind we can do to encourage people to get more involved in that, like this podcast, like our growth show, whatever, is important to do. And yeah, I'd like to do more of that. I've been itching. I've been telling Joe, like, I want to do more of like a casual hangout, like call-in show kind of thing, where it's just, we're just like shooting the shit, literally just like this, talking shit. People jump on and they give us, you know, you got a minute, make your case, and you tell us whatever you want, and then we talk about that for a few minutes, and then the next person calls in, and I don't know. So stay tuned.
It's like a talk show, right?
Yeah, like just
TalkFlow,
but not like even tech related always. Like, maybe it's like society, maybe it's culture, maybe it's art, maybe it's design. It's like literally just whatever.
It's like the Tim Ferriss podcast, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely random people.
Yep.
But it's really interesting to hear.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, we're excited about, like, you mentioned, like, Finsweet got a bunch of stuff coming out this year, so we're excited to see that. And yeah, I think just all of us, like, just being part of the Webflow community, are excited to see where the whole no code industry goes. And I've been in it for around 2 years now. Just seeing the growth is quite exciting. Like, being in it for 2 years, just being part of it is quite cool. So yeah, man, we're all excited to see where it goes, especially, you know, what Finsweet's going to release.
We're on this ride together, man. That's it.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. So I'm just we're gonna edit this part out, but we can do like a little outro. 3, 2, 1. All right, guys, that was episode 14, sorry, with Raymmar. You know, Raymmar, you mentioned a lot of, you know, cool stuff about your journey, about Finsweet, and we're excited to see what tools you got to release this year. But yeah, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you leave a like. Make sure that you also subscribe. If you've got any suggestions for episodes, then make sure that you comment. But yeah, guys, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.